Welcome back. All right, we have some captain vacancies in the National Hockey League. We have currently got 10 of them. I've got them all on the board right now, looking at who the last captains were. And the discussion of team captains, how important they are in the National Hockey League, has been out there. So I figured I'd throw on. This is actually a jersey with my name on it. But it's got the C on it because whenever you're ordering a jersey, you get the C or the A because then you point at this and go, hey, kids, you gotta listen to me and then they don't. But their laughter distracts them from whatever they're doing. But at any rate, the topic of captain and how important they are has been out there for a long time. The idea that, well, this team isn't going to win because that player's captain and he's not good enough. Or, yeah, this guy's captain, but the real captain is, and then you point at somebody else. Now, on the board, there's some teams here that will not name a captain this season. There's also some that will have a captain named over the next month. Some that will maybe name a captain as the season goes along. But reality is that it feels like there's a lot of teams, almost a third of the league right now, roughly a third of the league, really, when you got 10 out of 32, which do not have a captain. So let's go through this. And we'll do this in alphabetical order. Apologies to Winnipeg, but hey, you're on the board again. Anaheim, their last captain was Ryan Getzlaf from 2010 through to 2022 when his career came to an end. So they've already gone 1 year without a captain. And so the most likely captains, I would think Cam Fowler would be the most obvious one. Fowler's been there a long time. He's experienced. He's older than the other players. Troy Terry could make an excellent pick as well. Just signed an extension. You know, he's going to be there for a while, which is something you want in a captain. You want to make sure he wants to stick around. You don't want to name somebody captain and then need to name somebody else captain after the trade deadline or going into the following season. Now, not on the board, and I limited it to 2 players, but I will mention for Anaheim, eventually I think Zegras ends up being the guy. But that being said, between now and then, I think going with Fowler, that's where I would go with it, but we'll see what they do. The last captain for the Arizona Coyotes was Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He was captain from 2018 through to 2021. Their longest serving captain, of course, being Shane Doan. Now, going as long as they have without a captain, they don't have to name one this year, but I would think Clayton Keller has a very good chance of being named the captain there. Lawson Krause, the most likely outside of those two. It is also possible Arizona just says, you know what? Last 2 years we've been without a captain. We're fine. And you just keep going without a captain for a little while longer. But if they name Keller as captain, I think that would be fantastic. I think he's grown into that role. Boston, it doesn't feel like Boston's going to be without a captain for very long. It's part of the reason why I'm wearing the Boston one for this. Bergeron, the last captain, just 3 years as captain from 2020 through to 2023. And when he took over for Zdeno Chara, it was like, oh, he's finally captain. It felt like Bergeron should have been captain sooner. With no offense to Chara, Chara was an excellent captain as well. It would appear Brad Marchand has the job. If he wants it, it's his. If he doesn't, then maybe you look towards McAvoy. I don't have Pasternak on the board. It's possible that Pasta's the next captain, but I would think either Marchand or McAvoy. McAvoy is, mature for his age and for the amount of time he's been in the NHL, and Marchand's been there forever. So if they do name Marchand as captain, I would think he's got a minimum of 2 or 3 years left as a top performer and should be in the NHL longer than that. So Marchand probably the next captain. For the Flames, their last captain was Mark Giordano from 2013 until 2021. That's not the last time I'm going to talk about Mark Giordano in this video. After Giordano leaves, of course, we do not get a new captain right away. We still don't have one. Michael Backlund would seem like the most obvious pick. However, I mentioned earlier you want a guy who's got term and a guy who wants to stick around. Backlund is a UFA next summer. Therefore, there is the possibility that Backlund is not the next guy, that Backlund ends up being... and again, I say this only because if he decides he's not going to leave, that he ends up being passed over, and then maybe you look at Huberdeau. Huberdeau, very long-term contract for him. I think it would be, interesting to see if they did give him the captaincy, how that turned out. I don't have Weegar on the board, but I guess there's Weegar. There's also Kadri. There are a number of guys in Calgary who could take that job. So we'll see if it does end up being Backlund. If Backlund decides to stick around, he would be the obvious pick. And Lindholm. If Lindholm wants to stick around. Tanev, if he wants to stick around. So there's a lot of uncertainty around the Flames, but there's definitely no shortage of leadership. Jonathan Toews, of course, leaves his job as captain with the Chicago Blackhawks. He was captain from 2008 until 2023. Very long time as captain for him. And honestly, he will be regarded as one of the better captains we've seen in the National Hockey League. But that being said, now they need a new captain. I think Nick Foligno would be an obvious one. Now, people are going to say, what about Bedard? He's a rookie. He hasn't played a game yet. I think making Foligno captain for this year, and he's got a 1-year contract, I think that could be fantastic. I think that could work. Foligno's been a captain in the NHL before. Also, you have Seth Jones. But the thing is, if your plan is to have Bedard shepherded along to be your next leader and to be the face of the franchise, you could give Foligno the captaincy this year and then next year give it to Bedard. And as crazy as that sounds, we have seen younger players becoming captains sooner than we ever have before. So thinking of McDavid and how early he became captain, and hey, I thought, that could be potentially a disaster. It wasn't. So yeah, it's very possible we get a placeholder for Chicago until Bedard takes over, which might rule out Seth Jones, because you don't want to give him the captaincy and then take it away from him, make him the alternate again a year later or 2 years later. So, because Jones has a contract for a long time. So, we'll see what Chicago does. They may leave it empty for the year, but I think making Foligno captain would make a lot of sense. Claude Giroux is the last captain for the Philadelphia Flyers, that extending from 2012 through to 2021. The most obvious pick would be a returning Sean Couturier. Couturier missing all of last season. He's an excellent two-way forward. He would make a very good captain, I think, for the Flyers. But Scott Laughton was an alternate, so while part of me thinks maybe Konechny, the fact that Laughton had the alternate status last year means that they do see some leadership there with him. So maybe Laughton ends up being that next guy for them. Seattle, here we are again. Mark Giordano. Yep, just for the one season, and it wasn't a full season before he was traded. 21-22, which is, of course, the first season for the Seattle Kraken. The next options, obviously Jared McCann after the season he just had, and looking at the contract he has with the team, he would make a very good pick. Yanni Gourde, though, with his back-to-back cups with Tampa Bay, just his level of experience, it might be too tempting not to hand it off to Gourde. So, also in Seattle, there's a lot of players who could get it, but I think, to me, the most obvious is Gourde, even though Matty Beniers is right there, and he projects as an excellent two-way forward, coming off the Calder Trophy win and everything. Should be fascinating. St. Louis, Ryan O'Reilly, captain from 2020 until 2023. And the obvious next picks would be Braden Shen, who's got a good contract with them. He's a veteran leader. And Colton Parayko. So eventually, either Kyrou or Thomas probably ends up being captain. But Shen and Parayko are standouts in terms of the next likely captain. Both of them having worn A's with the St. Louis Blues. If they're going to keep Parayko, I think he could work as captain. Same with Shen. There are others who may very well work as well, but I would think those are the two most likely. You guys can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. It's fascinating to talk about captains. We will talk about Vancouver now. Bo Horvat, of course, captain from 2019 until 2023. And the next one appears to be Quinn Hughes. Everything's leading towards it likely being Hughes. There's been discussions about Pettersson, but he's just got the 1 year left on his contract. Doesn't really make sense to give Pettersson the C for reasons I mentioned before. But to me, JT Miller has to be a consideration as well. Hughes is the obvious one, but Miller, his contract's kicking in. It's a long-term contract. He's a veteran. He's temperamental. That might rule him out as captain, but, we've had temperamental captains in the NHL before. It is likely Hughes' job, though. I would think that's the most likely outcome, but we'll see. It could be fun if it was Miller, because then after every game, you're going to Miller for a comment. That can be highly entertaining. The Winnipeg Jets, of course, took the captaincy away from Blake Wheeler in 2022. He had been captain since 2016. They went without a captain last year. I think Josh Morrissey has to be the next guy. I just feel like it has to be Morrissey, although Adam Lowry's worn the alternate captain A for them as well. And so Lowry could be the next captain. But I think Morrissey makes a lot of sense. He plays a lot. He's a Jet at his core. I would also say maybe dark horse to a guy like Kyle Connor. But I would think Morrissey is ahead of him in terms of most likely to be the next captain. So there you go. Just a quick overview of it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Who do you think will get the captaincies for these 10 teams? And which teams do you think will look at this season and say, you know what? We're fine without a captain for now. Won't bother us. We do see that with teams usually going through a rebuild. And we may see that again this year. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.